Okay, so welcome to our second Craft Chocolate Book Club. My name's Kathryn.
Hi, and I'm Cat, and this month we're doing A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I've got my beautiful copy here. It's undoubtedly a story that many of you will know, if not all of you, and I think the reason we wanted to do it was partly because of that, so that we could have a new look at it, thinking about drawing things out by pairing chocolates with it, but also because it's a wonderful book. And we all know it from film adaptations of The Muppet Christmas Carol and all of those. And yet one thing that I felt, and just was brought home by rereading it, I'm sure you felt the same, Kathryn, was just what a fabulously written book it is. The prose is beautiful. And for me, it gave me a chance to sort of think anew what it really is, because we think of stories and the ghosts and all the Christmas Dickensian scenery. However, in a way, really what this book is a sort of one man's dark night of the soul, where he has a chance to reflect back on his life. And for me, it therefore becomes about one's lived experience, and in particular, and this is very relevant for craft chocolate, the choices that we make, how we buy what we buy, our impact on others, our impact on the world. And that's, I think, something that was particularly useful and good rereading it next to chocolate.
Yeah, and the choice of chocolate came from, well, our initial thoughts were about Christmas and Christmas food, and all those descriptions of that Victorian Christmas. And
chocolate makers make wonderful things at this time of year that wanted you to enjoy.
Yeah, so all those gingerbread bars and the spicy bars, and all of those. But actually, everybody knows the different stages of the book. You've got the past, the present, the future, and then the ending. So it's to choose the chocolate. We felt that because that's really familiar to everybody. We'll choose the chocolate according to those characters and what it means. And also putting the chocolate and the book together, it brought that idea of social injustice and capitalism and how that works. That kind of came through from looking at the choices of chocolate and what we could do and pairing.
And it's such an important thing in the chocolate industry.
Yeah, so hopefully we've chosen things that say Christmas, but also things that help us reflect on the themes in the book as well. So one of the things I loved about the book was that the whole interplay with dark and light in the book. That was one of the things that rereading it, that really came out for me, and all that the imagery, and that's another thing that I really took from the book this time, and again that kind of comes through in the chocolate choices too.
Absolutely. And it's really a very dark book in the sense that it's somebody really looking into their past and facing thoughts of their own death, but also very sadness and loneliness. And a lot of that gets lost when we have beautiful period adaptations on television, which always have a sort of comforting feel. When we look at beautiful TV historical adaptations, there's something comforting about them, isn't there? And so in a sense that was what really struck me in you reading it, was the darkness of it. Yeah,
me too.
But with our first choice of chocolate, we've really gone back to the past, haven't we? That's where we start, with Christmas Past. And tell us what it is. It's from Duffy, isn't it? So the wonderful Duffy Sheardown.
Duffy, who lives not far from me, actually, down the road in
He is really one of the godfathers of the British chocolate crafts movement. One of the very first people making chocolate from the bean in the UK. He used to be a racing car engineer, and he's got really good form with machinery, and knows how to use it for very fine-tuned purposes. And he's turned that brilliance towards making chocolate, and he really is somebody whose chocolate is all worth tasting. We've chosen for this the Venezuela Ocumare Dark Milk, which is one I've always absolutely loved.
And the reason for choosing that was we're looking at the past, and we're looking at the chocolate in the past, going back to the beginning of our relationship with chocolate and Venezuela, and the beans that were in Venezuela and being grown in Venezuela, they are quintessentially chocolate. You know, the flavors were all those central chocolate flavors, and that's what we remember chocolate as, those real central chocolate flavors. And when we look back, that's you know, it's those flavors that Venezuela gave us, isn't it?
People initially thought of Venezuelan chocolate as what chocolate tasted like. This chocolate is heavenly. Also, when we think of our own pasts, it tastes of fudge, caramel, deeply comforting flavors. And so it sort of evokes childhood. It evokes what we wish chocolate and milk chocolate kind of did taste like. It doesn't in reality, but it's way better. But also in the context of the book, the Ghost of Christmas Past takes Scrooge back to happier times, to the warmth of Christmas, to the warmth of his love with Belle, and a kind of much more halcyon, delighted, kind of love-filled world than the one he currently lives in. And it's a happy vision. And this is a very happy, satisfying, comforting chocolate. In the book, this is now lost to Scrooge, but I think that therefore Christmas Past does present something sweeter than it exists in the rest of the book.
Yeah, and the comfort and that, the real comfort, that memories of childhood.
Yes.
And you know, this is how I remember chocolate to taste, even though the chocolate I used to eat doesn't taste like this anymore. This is what you your memory of chocolate, a good chocolate.
What you think you remember. It's interesting. I've brought this chocolate to so many people in tastings across the years, because it was one that Duffy's been making for a while, and I've never met a single person who doesn't like it. And I think that it's interesting, dark milk, because this is 50 or 55%. What's it? It's 55.
It's 55. Yeah,
it's 55%. So it's a very high percentage for a milk chocolate, and the dark milk chocolate category is just and there are lots of them now. Most craft chocolate makers, when they make a milk chocolate now, make it with a higher percentage, and it's a really wonderful way for somebody who thinks that they're not sure of dark chocolate, they like milk chocolate, they like the chocolate that they used to eat from confectionery stores, to sort of start trying things where there's actually more evidence of the bean, there's more cacao taste in it. And it's also rather wonderful for people who are kind of think, oh no, I only like dark chocolate, I'm interested in proper chocolate, serious chocolate. Actually, great chocolate makers are making milk chocolates with higher percentage, where it's an interesting thing. It balances a full flavor of the cacao with the comfort of the milk, mellowing it, warming it. It's a different thing, but you can fully taste the cacao in this, and I love it. Yeah.
Like reading the book again, excuse me. One of the things that I got from that first the first visitation of the Ghost of the Past was that right from the start, you see the light, the potential light in Scrooge. You know, he's already got tears in his eyes from looking back at what happened to him and how that greed took over. And as you read through that chapter, as you're getting to the end, as he starts to give up on all the relationships and the people, and that darkness starts to creep in. That's again that made me think about Venezuela and all those things that we love. You know, we found something that was beautiful and full of flavor, but greed took over. So we took it to the colonies, and we made it into about making money, and rather than about the flavors that we
absolutely,
all those beautiful things that we had.
And yet, if we think about these things, if we're shown what the cacao industry is, what the chocolate industry is, there's an opportunity to do good with it, to appreciate the beautiful thing that was found in the first place. Yeah,
that light's still there.
It's always there. There's a little sweetness there, right, all the way through as well.
Yeah. So we move on from we move on to the Ghost of Christmas Present, and we've got 2 bars for the Ghost of Christmas Present.
We have indeed.
Because when you first meet him, he's this jolly giant, isn't he? And he is Christmas and Christmas feasts and just that whole festive, happy, jolly.
And there are so many wonderful descriptions in the book of Christmas feasts with detailing of all the spices and the oranges and the turkeys and the wonderful food. So there is despite the fact that Scrooge is sort of out in the cold for the duration of the book, actually he's going through his torment. There were wonderful tableaux of Christmas feasting, and that had to be included.
Yeah. So this is our Christmas tasting bar. So we've got the chocolate bar, and it's cinnamon toasted cacao nibs, and so it's a Peruvian chocolate base, but the cacao nibs are from Brazil, from the Axon estate, and the cacao nibs are the cinnamon is caramelized into the cacao nibs. So that's the so it's quite delicately done, and bringing in lots of, bringing in the tastes of the Peruvian cacao plus the Brazilian cacao, and then that added cinnamon to bring it all together and add that
cinnamon is cinnamon is also just a very, very warming thing, and spice has always been part of sort of traditional British puddings and makes you think of Christmases past and put the Christmas puddings and all of those kinds of things. I mean, there are certainly bars out there, and there's some fantastic things. It's really worth having a look at what the different craft makers are making for seasonal stuff. And there are some that are more overtly like, this is a Christmas pudding bar or whatever. This one is gentler. It's just cinnamon, and it matches with the cacao, but it's really delicate. The cinnamon,
that you get that
beautifully balanced with the fruit, but the fruit here comes from the cacao, not from plum pudding, raisins or things. There's a lot of fruit in this chocolate, and it's just beautifully balanced with this aromatic cinnamon.
You get that that warm cinnamon right at the front, and then as the chocolate starts to melt, you start getting those fruity flavors from the Peruvian. Yeah, really.
It's interesting because there's a sort of natural flavor journey in any complex chocolate, and it often goes from the sort of top notes through into the kind of mellow and middle notes and then the base notes. And interestingly, in this case, the cinnamon is there throughout, but the first notes are sort of yellow fruit and plum and then it gets mellower, and the middle mellow part is lots of dried fruit and caramel, and then I'm really sort of, now I'm in a kind of toasted whiskey sort of
but you get that really whiskey
with my cinnamon, all of which is so beautifully evocative of kind of Christmas puddings.
I know, you're going around the room, aren't you? You're just like, you're seeing him with all this surrounding him on the table, and you're just taking in all of the spices and the fruit, and just looking around and taking it all in. And then you've got that really sweet crunch at the end with the sweetness on the nibs, and then the crunch and that burst of flavor from the nibs.
It's a very, very fine seasonal bar, which I would happily eat all year round.
So I think that was a fantastic choice for our for the Ghost of Christmas Past and his feasting. And
I think it does a good job of reminding us of the part of actually the story which all the adaptations tend to bring to the fore, but which is this sort of what we know of as Christmas with the feasting and the spices and all of that. Yeah, definitely, it's gorgeous.
And the good thing about this bar is actually it is available all year round. So
okay, there you go.
You don't have to wait to Christmas.
Well done, Chocolada.
Absolutely, yeah. I think they said somewhere that if they the customers would be very, very disappointed if they didn't make it all year round. So
well, there we go.
So popular, but yeah, that's good.
Yep.
So we've had that feast, and then
we go into darker territory, don't we?
We do, because I don't remember this bit from the adaptations, and I don't know why. Maybe that's something I'm just shutting out. But when at the end, as you've gone, gradually, he's shown him, and it kind of reminds me going along over the sea and to the lighthouse. It's kind of a bit Snow Money, isn't he? Isn't it? But and then at the end, where he reveals the two children from under his cloak, and the ghost is getting older, and then you've got these two children, and you've got ignorance and want. He's describing this, and it really, really hit me reading that again, because I think I'd ignored that part of it. I don't think of that of all the things I think about when I think of A Christmas Carol. Now that's really
the primary thing you think of.
Really brought it home. And as far as the chocolate industry goes, it's just it is there. It's in your face. We have we want chocolate. We want to buy it. We want to eat it. We want it cheap, and we are prepared to ignore what some of the conditions and
what
some
that
of the
costs
things that are happening in order to get that to us.
Yeah.
So to me, this is why we went for we chose a bar from Ghana, where a large percent of our cacao comes from, and obviously we're looking at a bar that has it's made from the same sort of beans that all the other chocolate will be made from, but it's
I mean, the vast majority of the beans in West Africa are where the vast majority of the world's chocolate is made from beans from West Africa that are bulk cacao, that don't have the flavor potential necessarily of the very tiny percentage of fine chocolate potential. But this is an amazing example of what can happen if one treats those beans and the people who grow them in a better way.
So this is a bar made by
it's shiny Fresco and an American craft chocolate maker,
and they interestingly, they experiment with different parts of the making process, so different roasting profiles, different conching times. This one's a dark roast, medium conch, but you can also get this bar as a light roast and a subtle conch as well, and you can compare the two to see what the process is, how they affect the flavour.
They're leaving no stone unturned to pay real consideration to these beans.
And looking into this bar as well, the source of the cacao is from a cooperative, but what I didn't know, which I learned from looking into this bar, was that in Ghana it's illegal to sell wet beans. So
I did not know that either.
I didn't know that. So that's just sort of looking into this. And the beans, I think, are bought through Uncommon Cacao, who work in lots of different places, who work with farmers, and but often they are buying that there's a central fermentary, so the farmers just sell their wet beans, and then there's a central fermentary so that they can control the fermenting process to be able to get the quality to then be able to pay the farmers a better price. But in this, I think this is the only place where Uncommon Cacao buy from, where the farmers do all the fermenting as well.
Which is extraordinary, because that allows them to really build knowledge, expertise around the fermentation and add value. So the value, there's a value added there for the farmer, and expertise and input into the process, which will affect the final flavour.
So where fair trade and organic, the organic certification sometimes doesn't give the farmers that much more of an income, that the fact that the processes are there and the transparency is there allows this kind of chocolate to be, you know, to be crafted well, and so again, it was a really, although we're talking about Ghana and the issues there, it's such a it is a bright, light chocolate, and I'm hoping that
well, it's interesting that you said that this wasn't that this wasn't the lighter roast, because this is there's a very bright and up there. It's not high roast at all, and it's got such a lot of complexity in it for this type of bean. There is coconut, which is something that you would, is a sort of relatively undesirable, sort of ever-present flavour note in bulk West African cacao for the most part, the Amelinado varieties, but it's very subtle here, and it's mostly rounded out by their sort of apricot and kind of mellow fruit, plum, and actually the thing this tastes of most is chocolate pudding. I mean, this is very, very easy to like.
Fudgy, but with just
they'd made something incredibly appealing, very well considered, an amazing, creamy, very satisfying mouthfeel as well, all out of cacao that the sort of fine industry disregards and the main industry really exploits in a way that isn't good for the farmers, and the cacao itself doesn't translate well. This is a beautiful translation of this cacao.
It is absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
I love that. And it'd be interesting to try the other roast as well, to see, because that doesn't feel like a dark roast, does it?
Not at all. I don't think it is really. They've obviously, I mean, American craft chocolate makers are often incredibly attentive to it's you know, it's sort of tends to be thoughtful that you know, things tend to high roast is very much sort of French style. American craft chocolate makers are really trying to attend to the best interpretation of the bean, and intervene least. So it may be that this is really comparatively light roast, and there's another that is even less. Be good to taste it. We should, somebody, that's also another interesting thing you guys might want to do. It's like get them all and compare the same cacao a different way by the same maker, but processed slightly differently. It's an incredible lesson in how much the process of making chocolate influences the final flavor in a way that is really, can be really stunning and very interesting and very delicious too.
So to me, this, you know, this is redemption, isn't it? This is, you know, we've got the same farmers, same beans, but it doesn't have to be about ignorance and want. There is redemption here. There is a way, there is a choice, there is a way to do things different, and that's what this bar represents to me.
Wonderful, one wonderful choice, and it goes really well. But we're going darker now.
We are, yes.
I'm gonna interject here with something.
No, goes to the Christmas future, obviously.
Before we get celebratory and sort of saying our happy Christmases, I think it was striking reading the book how, you know, how dark it is. I mentioned that before, not least because the whole book takes place in the night, and in one sort of never-ending night. You know, at the beginning of the book, he's sort of told it'll come tomorrow night, and then and yet he never emerges. He never emerges from this darkness, and it kicks off just as he even arrives home, and then his door knocker transforms into something sort of scary and sinister. And then he really is, in a way, in a point of kind of discomfort and dark right through until essentially he makes a choice that he's going to force himself forward and out of it. But it's still sitting there, the dark's still sitting there waiting for him if he doesn't make those actions. So I really wanted, we had a chat, and we just sort of felt that this was an opportunity to bring an 100% chocolate. It's just the little extra one in the box. There are 4 full-size bars, but we thought that because you may not want, especially if you're new to it, and one of the bars to be the whole thing to be 100%. What this means is that there is no sugar in it. There is nothing but the cacao bean processed into smooth chocolate. And what it presents is something very that one has to pay attention to. Yeah. It's challenging 100% chocolate because it is intense, but there is also an absolute purity about it. It is a sort of pure message of the sort of the full experience of something, and I think that's what Scrooge gets on that night. Yeah. This one is from Palu, which is one of the great bean to bar French chocolate makers, and you can get I'm sure get this, you'll get this in your box, but they're masters at chocolate making, and this is one of the bars that they make. You need a very tiny little bit when you're going to taste it, and
I received this in one of the first Cocoa Runners boxes that I
did. You?
Yeah, and I was learning about chocolate, and I remember thinking, okay, 100%, and I just didn't get it at all. Just didn't like it at all, and thought, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna, chocolate's maybe not for me.
Maybe not for me. I think it puts some people off, and then, or else it also, there's a kind of certain machismo about it.
Yeah.
As in, oh, I can take that, a bit like, oh, it's a hot chili, or this, the intensity. Actually, I think it just, to really appreciate an 100% bar, you need to put it in a different context in your mind. It's not the same experience as eating any of the other percentages of chocolate. It's more like having a little cup of espresso. It's very enlivening, it's very intense. You take a small amount, and this chocolate is intense in that way. It opens out into this extraordinary, it's full of sort of citrus and brightness. There's only very small, tiny amounts of bitterness, which is more of a kind of seasoning to the flavor profile because it's not overdone. And I know, because you've told me before, but your second experience of tasting this chocolate was very different, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's because, and it is that learning to just concentrate and find what the chocolate has to offer. It's not, you can't just wait for it to talk to you, this chocolate. You have to just concentrate and find, and then the light appears. It's just, it is like a light bulb, it's just, you just see it. It's just, it just comes to you, but you've got to search for it. I think that's
it's full of that. And I sort of think that in a way, if I'm going to draw the thematic parallel along with Scrooge's journey to its conclusion, in this respect, if you go into the experience of something that might be more challenging, that you haven't done before, not that eating a piece of chocolate is equivalent to a sort of life quest of the soul, but that actually it's its own reward. He ends up getting something unexpected but life-changing out of it. And I think in many ways, those of us who taste a lot of exquisite craft chocolate, there is a sort of unadulterated purity in a really fine 100% chocolate that I wouldn't want all of every day, but that is a real joy. Yeah. And this is this chocolate is a real joy, but you kind of need to expect something different from it.
So I think we needed that darkness, didn't we? We had to have that darkness in there.
Yeah, it was a good moment to introduce it to people who've not tried it before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then after the 3 visitations, Scrooge is a new man, isn't he? So he's
certainly determined to become one.
Christmas.
Yeah. Well, he's determined to become one in his actions. I think you're right. He is one by that point in his soul, because he sort of experiences his loneliness and is determined to end that. He experiences his effect on the world and is determined to end that. so he's absolutely got a sort of new start, but it's still Christmas.
Yeah.
So the joy of Christmas rings forth.
Right, yeah.
And so we've got something very joyful.
We have, yeah. So we're doing the Menacau bar with so Madagascan with orange and cranberries.
Perfect. One of the things I like most about this bar is the way it sort of evokes the chocolate orange chocolate that we all have at Christmas and had since kids, but it does it in a really sophisticated, beautiful way.
Yeah.
It's sort of memories, and it's also yet something with the cranberries. It sort of wakes up the orange flavour, wakes up the very fruity cacao that this is made from.
And I think, to me, I use it as a way to show the balance of inclusions and the flavour of chocolate, because the Madagascan, you know, you're expecting those citrusy red berry flavours, and they're all in there. But then you've got the inclusions that are the same flavours, but they're just, complementing each other and not cancelling each other out. They are. It's a very well balanced bar.
Not at all. It's bright. It's very. What's the word? Gosh, I'm lost for words. It's so good. It's sort of. It's tangy and also got lots of lovely kind of mellow honeyed flavors as well. It's very satisfying from that point of view, sort of super fruit, tangerines, and
and it's more whereas the spicy one was kind of complex, and you know, this is just sort of kind of more exuberant and bright,
very straightforwardly very enjoyable. It's the orange at the bottom of your stocking, this one.
And when people taste this, they say it tastes like Christmas.
Oh, perfect. Well, there you go. It does. It truly does. I think it's great. I can't think of anyone who sort of wouldn't like this. It's very naturally festive, but also it's not actually just a Christmas themed bar, is it?
No. It
tastes like Christmas, but it's one of their pairings that they do all year round.
Absolutely, and because it's a raised trade bar, so it's made in Madagascar, where the cacao comes from. And the oranges and the cranberries are also all grown in Madagascar, so it's a Madagascan
there you
bar,
go.
rather
It's
than
impossible not to eat more.
Yeah, absolutely perfect Christmas bar. so that was a really, really lovely end. And again, it doesn't have to be, you know, we hope that Scrooge he hasn't got the spirit of Christmas just for that day. He's going to change his life and the way his relationships with people. He's going to be a different.
He doesn't, given how distressing the night has been, and how, although obviously he's had all the ghosts with him, he's been in solitude, and you've got quite a strong sense of this sort of small figure in the midst of the ominous. He doesn't go into himself when it concludes. He doesn't muse alone. I think he makes a very public declaration of his desire to change and the fact he's going to change. He puts it in motion and declares it and enters amongst others with it in a way that I think is almost one of the most positive things about the whole, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Although although I've really enjoyed the idea of flavour and Christmas and the light that comes out of this book, one of the things that by pairing it with the chocolate and looking into it made me think more about capitalism and how Ebenezer, he changes, and he changes what he does with the money that he's created. But what doesn't happen in the book is, or you know, as far as we know, he doesn't change how he makes that money. So his wealth and the generation of his wealth that's not what's being shown as being bad here. It's just the fact that he should do better and do more with the money. And from a chocolate point of view, to me, that's more like coming up with a corporate responsibility program, rather than addressing, you know, those issues with, you know, how you make money in the first place.
And
And I
Dickens
think,
certainly had a critique on this, and across his
yeah,
novels, the sort of social conscience is very much at the heart of a lot of what his settings and their interaction with the characters are all about. I mean, I think for me, right, that goes so far, but I think for me, rereading this book and then placing these chocolates alongside it, it sort of what it gave me most was just, it sort of brought home the idea that one has one chance, one life,
yeah,
and that there are a couple of things that we need to consider, that it makes us consider, one of which is one's own lived experience. You know, what do you do? How rich is it? Just literally, Scrooge is sort of not eating the feast. He's not with the love
yeah,
of his life.
yeah,
All those things on a personal level, I think it's very, very affecting.
yeah,
So like, what do you go for? What do you lose if you don't? So personal experience to kind of, it seems to me a call to arms to kind of live one's life to the full.
yeah,
And then
absolutely.
also absolutely embedded with that is our effect on those around and about us, both our loved ones and those in our community and our vicinity, and then also the greater world. And that's what I really take away from rereading it and these pairings.
Yeah, I think I've learned quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it leaves us now to just say happy Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.